Episode 15, When Church Culture Replaces Scripture.
Let's talk about one of the quietest shifts happening in modern church life. It's really subtle, but it's also one of the most powerful forces that can shape a community of faith.
See, this isn't something that happens with a big bang. It's more like a slow, gradual drift, something that can happen over years, maybe even decades, without anyone really noticing.
Right. There's no email that goes out. No one stands up in front of the church to announce a new policy. It's this unspoken evolution, and that's exactly what makes it so tricky to pin down. And that, right there, is the heart of the issue. Over time, the way a church does things, its culture, can quietly start to take on the same weight, the same authority as what the Bible actually says. And the crazy part is, so many sincere, faithful believers never even notice that the switch happened. All right, let's really dive into this. To get a handle on this whole dynamic, we first have to be crystal clear on what we even mean by church culture. Now, it's super important to say this up front. Church culture isn't automatically a bad thing, not at all. In fact, it can be really beautiful. The danger isn't in having a culture, it's in what that culture is allowed to become. Think about it. At its best, a church's culture is just its unique flavor. It's the collection of shared habits, the rhythm of your community life, the local traditions you all love, and all the practical preferences for how you get things done. Honestly, that's the stuff that makes a church feel like home. And this is it. This is the exact pivot point where a healthy culture can start to become a problem. It happens when a simple preference, a tradition, a habit, whatever, stops being treated like a choice and starts being treated like a biblical requirement. That's the line. And once it's crossed, confusion starts to set in. So how in the world does this shift actually happen? I mean, how does a simple preference start to feel like some kind of divine rule? Well, it's usually a quiet, almost psychological process. It often unfolds in these 3 quiet steps. First, a practice just gets repeated over and over and over again. Then, all that repetition creates a deep sense of familiarity. And eventually, that feeling of this is normal starts to feel like this is authoritative. Before you know it, people just stop asking that simple but powerful question. Hey, why do we do this? Where is this actually taught? And this whole shift gets reinforced by these well-meaning but powerful little phrases. You start hearing things like, this is what faithfulness looks like, or this is what truly committed believers do. And just like that, a cultural practice gets welded to the idea of genuine spiritual obedience. Now here's the crucial thing to get. People in the pews aren't trying to be misled. They are genuinely trying to be faithful. They're just operating on some very understandable assumptions, right? Like, well, if we're doing it at church, it must be biblical. Or, if the pastor is encouraging this, it must be necessary. Or, hey, if everybody around me is doing it, it must be required. So this brings us to a really powerful ancient model for how to navigate this exact kind of situation. It's something we can call the Berean check. Okay, so in the book of Acts, there's this group of believers in a town called Berea, and they get this amazing compliment. They're called noble-minded. Why? Well, because they eagerly listened to the teaching, but they didn't stop there. They went home and they dug into the scriptures every single day to see if what they were being told was actually true.
So that Berean mindset gives us a great lens for our own church environments. You can watch for a few little warning signs, like moments when honest questions are kind of quietly discouraged. Or pay attention if a practice is defended with a lot of emotion instead of with scripture. Be aware if loyalty to the group seems more important than the theological clarity. And just be mindful if some traditions are treated as if they're completely untouchable. So what does all this mean for us today? Well, this model doesn't give us a license for rebellion. No, it gives us a framework for responsible faith. It actually gives us permission to ask some really important questions. You are absolutely 100% allowed to ask, respectfully and humbly, where is this taught in the Bible? That's not a challenge, it's a search for clarity. It's a good thing. And you're also allowed to just examine the things you do and ask yourself, is this a direct command from Scripture, or is this a really valuable tradition of our specific environment? Just learning to tell the difference is a huge part of spiritual growth. I really want this to sink in. Testing what you are taught is not a sign that you have a rebellious heart. It is a sign of a responsible one. It's exactly what the Bible itself models for us. Now look, if you're listening to this and you're starting to notice some of this tension in your own church experience, I get it. It can be really unsettling. So here's just a little bit of advice. First, just stay calm.
Second, stay humble. And third, stay in the text. Let the Bible itself be your anchor. Clarity always grows best in steady hands. All right, so how do we wrap all this up? What's the big takeaway? Let's land on one final, really powerful thought, and then a super practical next step you can take, like this week.
Those are not my words. Those are the words of Jesus himself from the Gospel of Mark. He gave a very direct, very serious warning about the danger of letting our human traditions get elevated to the same level as God's commands.
So here's your practical step. Sometime this week, when you hear a strong spiritual claim made, just gently and honestly ask the question, maybe to yourself, maybe to a trusted friend, where is that clearly taught in Scripture? Not with any hostility, just with a sincere heart that's looking for the truth. Welcome to Raw Revelation. Here, we stand on Hosea 4:6, because that warning was never meant for the world, it was meant for the priests. And we always remember Acts 17:11, where the Bereans were called noble for one reason. They searched the scriptures daily to see if what they were being taught was true. If this explainer helped you, please share it. And if you know someone else who needs to hear it, subscribe. Because around here, our goal is to sow truth the way Jesus taught it, not the way man demands.